So, as Pastor Amanda said, this is the first Sunday of Lent. We are starting the 40-day, well, we started on Wednesday, the 40-day journey as we prepare for Easter, as we prepare for the death and eventual resurrection of Christ, and also as we remind ourselves that Christ will come again. It's similar to Advent. It happens before Easter, just like how Advent happens before Christmas. It's a time where we reflect, we repent, we reconnect with God, getting ready to celebrate Christ. And as a church during Lent, we are going to go through a series called Death by Stuff. All right, and what is going to happen is, the reality is the Bible talks about poverty over 2,000 times. It's the most talked about subject in the entire Bible. Over 2,000 times it talks about wealth, poverty, money, taking care of the poor. Over 2,000 times, and also, it happens to be one of our country's biggest, if not the biggest, struggle. What do we do with our wealth? And so we're going to compare those two and see what our life should be like. This started with the realization, a couple months ago I was talking to somebody, probably Cecilia, because that's how normally these things start. I was talking to somebody, and we were talking about how the Bible talks about poverty over 2,000 times. And we were talking about how early on in Christianity, it really took off and caught a lot of steam because it was providing hope for people on earth as well as eternal hope. And that hope was Jesus was a poor, outcast person talking to impoverished, outcast people. And Jesus' hope to those people, Jesus' message was about poverty, was essentially it's okay that you're poor because you're actually better off than the rich. Jesus was reminding people your life here and now is bigger than your paycheck. And for a bunch of poor people, that's a good thing to hear. And so the question comes 2,000 years later, when I am currently not talking to a bunch of impoverished people, what is the hope for Jesus in our lives? And so that's what we're going to be exploring for the next 6 weeks, is the idea that Jesus' hope for us, for the rich, for the wealthy, is the way to get out of that trap, is speaking against that lifestyle because it will free us and save us, is the argument we will be making. So that is what we're going to be talking about over the next 6 weeks. And today we start with this story found in Luke's gospel of a guy who builds a bigger barn. A guy who he's been farming, he had an incredible harvest, gets more than he expects, and so he decides, I need to build a bigger barn, then I'll be set for life. We're starting with this story because, unfortunately, hopefully you saw this as you heard this story, but the reality is in the United States, we are the guy with the bigger barn. Like, we just are. If you are sitting in this pew right now, if you're watching on Facebook right now, you're the guy building the bigger barn. You just are. How do I know that? Not just with the wealth gaps, with the fact that over half of the world lives on $1.50 a day and our average medium income is $30,000 a household. Not only because when you look at the fact that even our relative poverty is luxury in most countries, but the statistics of the fact that in 1960, the average household had 2.4 kids and the house was 1,100 square feet. Today, the average household has 0.9 kids. We got like the Langlands bumping up that average, but 0.9 kids. And the average house size is 2,300 square feet. We are literally building bigger houses for less people. Literally building bigger barns. We have less people living at home and we're building bigger houses so that we can fit all of our extra stuff. But it doesn't even just stop there. 90% of people have household items in their garage. Their bigger house with less people in it isn't even big enough. They need to start putting stuff in their garage. 90% of people have stuff in their garage. 75% of people can't fit a car in their garage because they have so much stuff in it. Yeah, I don't know about y'all. Cecilia wanted me to clarify. My car can't fit in our garage because it's shorter than it's supposed to be. It's not because we have too much stuff. But that statistic means that most of you have too much stuff in your garage, but it doesn't even just stop there. We're not even building bigger houses with bigger garages to fit all of our extra stuff. 10% of households have a storage unit, an off-site storage unit that they pay monthly to store the extra stuff that they can't fit in their bigger garage, that they can't fit in their bigger house, because they have so much stuff. As a country, we spend $154 billion. That was as of 2018, so I think it's more now. $154 billion on storage units each year. $154 billion average Americans spend to store stuff that we can't fit in our already bigger houses. We have a stuff problem. And when I say we, I mean you and me, not collective we, not United States. The people sitting right here, we have a stuff problem. We have too much stuff. We store it, we stash it, we hide it, we pretend like it's not there, but we have too much stuff. I got some more statistics for you just in case you didn't feel challenged already. Did you know that every year the United States spends $1.2 trillion on non-essential goods? $1.2 trillion on non-essential goods, 10 times the economy of Russia on non-essential goods, things that we don't need to survive, in addition to the $145 billion we spend on storage units to store the $1.2 trillion worth of stuff that we buy. Did you know that the average 10-year-old has 238 toys, but they can only point to 12 of them? The average 10-year-old has 238 toys. Our country has 3% of the world's children and 40% of the world's toys. We have a stuff problem. It's invaded and infected every single thing about our lives. Suddenly, it has become, if I want to tell someone I love them, what do? I give them stuff. If I want to celebrate someone, what do? I give them stuff. If I want to have therapy and self-care and care about myself, what do? I go shopping for stuff. Stuff has become our way to communicate our love for each other. It's become our way to communicate how much we appreciate each other. It's become the way we reward ourselves and others for good things. And it is literally killing us. Our stuff kills us. The passage in there that he read, one of my favorite translations of this. So it starts, let me find the verse. In verse 15, Jesus said to them, "Watch out, guard yourself against all kinds of greed. After all, one's life isn't determined by one's possessions, even when someone is very wealthy." Jesus is saying your life's not determined by how much you have. There's another translation that I read. I think it was the NIV. I'm not sure. It sounded a lot like what Jeff read. But the way they phrased that is they said, a man's life consists not in the abundance of things. And that word in stuck out to me. Not of, but in. Jesus is saying your life's not defined by how much stuff you have, but the way that was worded, it's like Jesus could be saying your life can't exist within the abundance of stuff because our abundance of stuff is literally killing us. All right, some more statistics for you in case you don't believe me. Our stuff is killing us whenever they've done a lot of studies on this, and they found out that when you have a cluttered environment, when you have a lot of stuff lying around your house, when you have cluttered closets, when your garage is too full to fit a car in it, your cortisol levels raise similar to chronic fatigue, PTSD, and they cause stress that leads to heart attack and stroke. Some people were 2 times more likely to have heart attacks because they lived in cluttered environments. And the shocking thing is, it doesn't even just happen from the environment, it happens from a picture. So that picture on your bulletin of the cluttered garage, if you look at that, your stress levels rise. And we are putting ourselves in environments that are causing us to have chronic anxiety and fatigue. We are literally killing ourselves early because we have so much stuff. And that's not even touching on the environmental factors, the pollution that goes out, the fact that our landfills are full. Literally, Georgetown's landfill is full. The fact that we're destroying our ecosystems and environments, it doesn't deal with all of that. It doesn't deal with the inhumane slave labor that creates a lot of the cheap goods that we buy. I'm not even talking about all that. I'm talking about literally your cluttered house is actively right now killing you. Clutter is like smoking. It kills you. We are actively killing ourselves by filling our house full of stuff. This story about this guy who builds a bigger barn and then he dies is the story that we ourselves are living every single day. It's the story that we're choosing to put ourselves through every single day because we're not taking seriously the fact that we are addicted to stuff. One of my favorite quotes of all time is the first one in your bulletin. It's by Ice Cube. It says, "Stop buying things you don't need with money you don't have to impress people you don't like." That is the American dream. That is what we are all striving for, is more stuff to impress more people, and we actually don't even care about any of it. As Madonna said, we are material girls in a material world. And so what are we going to do about it? What is the answer to this problem? There's a lot of answers to the problems, but the first thing is just realizing it is a problem, admitting to ourselves, yes, this is something that's not okay. Looking at our lives and saying, I am overwhelmed with the things I own. William's not talking about someone else. He's not talking about my grandma with too much stuff. He's talking about me specifically right now. But Jesus points to a couple of things in this story that are good reminders for us as we begin to deal with the fact that we own too much stuff. One thing Jesus reminds us of is this idea, this guy, he's pursuing this bigger barn. Why? So that he can live comfortably, so he can be happy. It's the idea of his stuff is going to fulfill his life. We need to remind ourselves that our stuff is not connected to our emotions. We need to take the emotions out of the stuff. This is one of the hardest things that we can do. I have a friend who is a pastor who recently, so he's a pastor, so he's been moving all of his life, packing up boxes. He retired, and they're moving into what they're calling their last house. This is their retirement house. He said the next move's either going to be to the grave or to the nursing home. I'm not sure which. Depends on what my wife has to say about it. But so they're packing up their house, and they decided, instead of just moving all their stuff with them to this new house, they were actually going to take a second and say, what do we need? And the biggest thing they were going to do is, instead of holding on to all these possessions for their kids to one day inherit, they were going to ask them, do you actually want this? Now, that's a dangerous question because, as he found out, you normally don't like the answer. And so they downsized, he said, from about 3 moving trucks when they came here to a little U-Haul when they left, because they went to their kids and said, hey, we've had this furniture for 3 generations. When we die, are you going to keep it? And they said, no, we're going to sell it. Like, we already have dining room tables. We don't have to pass down heirlooms anymore. And they said that was heartbreaking, but okay, we'll sell it for you. They said, hey, we're saving all this memorabilia. Do you want this? And the son said, no, Dad, I digitized that 5 years ago. No, I don't want your picture albums. I've already got a copy of it. They said it way kinder than that. But of course I don't want your boxes of records of past sermons for 48 years. I slept through those already. I don't need the traces of them. And what they realized is these things that they were holding on to that they thought were so emotional and so important weren't. They were just things. And at one point, his daughter told him, she said, Dad, I'm not going to remember you by the stuff. I'm going to remember you by all the life lessons you taught me. And he said, well, dang it. I guess I raised her right. Touche. And so they sold a bunch of stuff. We have to separate the emotions from our things. We have to realize that no, things aren't going to save me. No, they're not going to protect me. No, they're not going to continue on my legacy. It's not the power of things. The second thing that we have to realize is what Jesus says at the end. He says, he was not generous towards God, was the indictment. We have to remember that our first call is not to hoarding, but to generosity. That was true of this time period. They were a communal society. They were built on this idea of we're the people of Israel. We're all in this together. And so I practice hospitality. We talked about hospitality a couple weeks ago. That idea of what I have has to be shared with someone else because it's not from me. It's from God. And so every 50 years we're going to practice jubilees, and we're going to leave stuff in the field so that other people can gather it. And we're going to constantly be sharing with others because we're a community. And this guy was going against that. He was protecting himself. He was not being generous, and Jesus calls him out. And so we need to remember, As Christians, the marker of our success is not how big our house is and how much stuff's in it, but how much we've given away, how much we've shared, how much we've been willing to give to others. The indictment is not that the guy had too much stuff and he had to build a bigger house. It's that he was so stingy, he got in the mess in the first place. We should be giving away so much we don't have to ask, what do I do with my extra stuff? We should be constantly looking to support other people so much we don't have to ask, what should I do with the rest of my stuff? Because we shouldn't be in the problem in the first place. We should constantly be trying to minimize how much we're getting, giving it away, selling it. And I'm not talking about you bought a couch and then decided you didn't like it and there's like a pee stain on it from a dog and now you're going to be charitable and give it to Goodwill. I'm talking about don't buy the couch in the first place and just give the money away. Jesus reminds us that the mark of a Christian is generosity to God, not building a bigger house. And so, what do we do right here, right now? What do we do to take this seriously, to say, yes, I'm going to respond to this? God clearly draws a parallel between taking care of the poor, not being attached to possessions, and being in favor with God. God clearly connects these two concepts. I'm going to take this seriously. What do we do now? I have two suggestions for you, and we'll be building on this as we go. But two suggestions this week for you. The first is, we need to realize how big our problem actually is. You can't treat a problem until you've diagnosed it. And so my challenge to you, each individual, you can do it as a household, you can do it as a family. Each individual, I challenge you, take an inventory of the things in your home. Take an inventory of the stuff that you actually own, because oftentimes we don't realize how much we actually have. So I challenge you to go around and count it. I'm not even saying you have to give anything away yet. Just count what you actually have. Cecilia and I did this a few years ago when we were still living in Atlanta. And you got to understand, this is at a time I was in grad school. She was in ministry, so we were poor. We owned a house living in inner city Atlanta, collectively probably made $40,000 to $45,000 a year. That was our household income. So we didn't have a lot of disposable income floating around. But even so, when we did this inventory of our house, we found like 15,000 things. And it was stuff like, we found 95 DVDs, even though at the time, not only did we not own a DVD player, we didn't even have a TV. And we had 95 DVDs. We found 45 hand towels. There's only 4 hands in this house, and we have 45 hand towels. Only 6 throw pillows, which, like Cecilia has explained to me, are important, even though I feel like you just throw them away, but whatever. Only 6 throw pillows. We had so much stuff that we didn't actually need, and as we were counting things, we realized we were like, we can't, our count... She's calling me out. We had 250 pins in our house, like writing pins, because I just collect them, apparently. But what we found out is we didn't want our number to be so high. As we were counting, we were saying, no, give this away. Don't include it in the inventory. Let's just clean out this whole thing, because we don't want our number to be that high. When you start to confront how big of a problem you actually have, it just stares you in the face, and you can't help but do something about it. So that's my first challenge to you. Take an inventory of your house. Take all Lent. Take your time with it. Go room by room. That's how we did it. We made a Google Drive sheet. That's how I still have records. We made a Google Drive sheet, and we would go room by room, and we would just count everything. We would lump some stuff. It would be like box of finger lights instead of each individual finger light, things like that. But take an inventory of your house. See what you're actually working with. And also, let me know what ridiculous things you come up with, too, because I'm curious about that. So that's challenge 1 for Lent. My second challenge for you, realize how much stuff you have, but also start curbing how much stuff you bring in. If we just continue to give things away, but continue to buy things to replace it, it's not going to do anything. And so my challenge to you as an individual, as a family, as a household, practice some kind of spending fast. Okay, I'm going to let you figure out what that looks like, but maybe that means one day a week I don't spend at all. Maybe Fridays, I don't buy anything, period. I don't pay bills, I don't buy food, I do not spend any money on that day. Maybe it means that I'm only going to spend money at like 10 different places throughout Lent. Maybe I'm going to limit the places I buy on. Maybe I'm not going to purchase anything online during Lent. Sorry, that's my That's my fast from busyness alarm for all of our small groupers. Maybe it means I'm going to set an amount where I only spend X number of amount a week. Whatever it is, practice a spending fast during Lent. Show yourself that you don't actually have to buy all the things you feel like you have to buy. So take an inventory, practice a spending fast, and let's start taking steps to deal with the fact that we as a country have a stuff problem. If y'all would pray with me. God, we're sorry that we've let this get out of hand. God, we're sorry that we've failed you, that we've become distracted by things, that we've let the ownership of stuff consume us in a way that only you should consume us. God, we're sorry that bigger houses and more things and more storage and being prepared has caused us to lose sight of your love and generosity. God, convict us now. Change us. Change our eyes, our lives, the way we see the world, so that we might pursue you and not things. God, it's in your name we pray. Amen.